I'm Laura Dickinson-Turner.
And I'm John Dyer V.
With NewsWrap, a summary of some of the news in or affecting LGBTQ communities around the world for the week ending November 23, 2019. A lesbian couple has filed a petition in Thailand's constitutional court after their request to register their marriage was rebuffed. The illegal bias lawsuit was submitted on November 22nd through the advocacy group Foundation for Sexual Orientation and Gender Identity Rights and Justice. Spokeswoman Nayana Supapung told the Straits Times that the Thai constitution guarantees our birthrights of having a family and descendants. It also protects us citizens against discrimination of all kinds, including gender. The petition charges that denying marriage equality violates Thailand's civil and commercial code. It states that all persons are equal before the law and shall have rights and liberties and be protected equally under the law. Anjana Suvarnananda of the LGBTQ rights group Anjaru Foundation told Reuters that the legal challenge is risky. She says she's worried that the outdated notion of marriage will persist for a while if the court challenge fails. Douglas Sanders is an academic associate at the Mayadol University in Bangkok who has researched the burgeoning movement for marriage equality in Asia. He told Reuters that even losing the court fight isn't always terrible. It is on TV, in the papers, and on social media, which gives the issue, the individuals, and organizations visibility.
Meanwhile, Thai lawmakers are considering a less-than-marriage civil partnership bill for same-gender couples. The draft legislation being developed has brought mixed reviews from equality activists. It does not grant same-gender couples the full range of heterosexual spousal benefits or allow queer couples to adopt. Some in the community say it's a good first step. Others argue that it will perpetuate the second-class status of gay and lesbian couples. 4 out and proud LGBTQ Thais were elected to parliament in national elections earlier this year. They're expected to push for expanded rights, ranging from changing restrictive dress codes to marriage equality. Thailand has had the reputation of being one of the more queer-welcoming countries in Asia since homosexual acts were decriminalized there in 1956. According to a survey by the United Nations Development Program last year, 2 in 3 Thais say they have no objection to same-gender unions.
A crusading transgender activist won a historic court ruling in Zimbabwe on November 21st. High Court Justice Francis Beer found that the arrest and 3-day detention of trans woman Ricky Nathanson was both thoughtless and malicious. It all began with Nathanson's 2014 bathroom arrest by 6 police officers in riot gear for using the women's bathroom in a Harare bar. The written ruling condemned several crude, invasive medical examinations that Nathanson was forced to undergo while in custody. Justice Beer concluded that the conduct of the police in arresting and detaining her was quite outrageous. Nathanson's lawsuit asked for the equivalent of $2.7 million in damages, but the judge awarded her only about $1,100. In his words, the amount was not meant to enrich the victim, but to try and salvage some kind of dignity for the pain endured. He did order the defendants to also pay court costs. Nathanson was granted U.S. asylum last year after documenting the pervasive persecutions she experienced in the oppressively anti-queer Southern African nation. She now lives in a suburb of Washington, D.C., and works for a trans rights organization. Zimbabwe's rabidly homophobic dictator, Robert Mugabe, ruled the country for 20 years with an iron fist. LGBTQ people were regular targets of his vile rhetoric until he was overthrown in 2017. He died in September. The online news site iHarare.com noted that Nathanson's victory was all the more remarkable because it was launched during Mugabe's tenure. The site headlined its report of this story, "Mugabe Turning in His Grave."
A third U.S. federal judge has rejected the Trump administration's policy to allow discrimination against LGBTQ people based on religious freedom. The policy covered any program or agency getting federal funds from the Department of Health and Human Services, or HHS, announced on November 1st. The rule change was yet another attempt to roll back anti-bias protections established during the administration of Barack Obama. It allows federally funded health care providers to cite moral or religious objections for denying abortion services, contraception, gender confirmation surgery, or other services. U.S. District Judge William Alsup of the Northern District of California, minced no words in his decision. Alsup wrote, "When a rule is so saturated with error as here, there is no point trying to sever the problematic provisions. The whole rule must go." District judges in New York and Washington had already come to the same conclusion. The LGBTQ advocacy group Lambda Legal was one of the plaintiffs in the California court challenge. Senior attorney Jamie Glicksberg said in a written statement that the denial of care rule targets some of our most marginalized and vulnerable communities and deserves to be relegated to the dustbin of history. The rulings apparently don't address other services. The announced rule changes would allow groups receiving HHS funding to deny based on moral or religious belief. Those include adoption and foster care placement, homeless shelters, or HIV services.
Australian immigration authorities are treating an asylum-seeking gay journalist couple from Saudi Arabia as badly as the homeland they were forced to flee. On their arrival in Australia, the men were searched, handcuffed, and taken to a detention center. Their pseudonyms are Sultan and Nassar. They've been together for 16 years. According to the Sydney Star Observer, Sultan said that he and Nassar fear being deported back to Saudi Arabia, where he says they would get immediately picked up and thrown into prison and possibly made to disappear. "If I had any idea this was going to happen to us," he said, "we would have gone to another country." The queer advocacy group Just.Equal accused the Australian government of doing the job of the Saudi government by detaining the men. The couple lived a relatively lavish life in Riyadh, although deeply closeted. Homosexual acts can be punished by execution. Sultan says he worked for the media ministry and defended the regime to international reporters. He also sometimes worked with foreign journalists as a field producer. Sultan says he came under suspicion for passing negative information about the regime to foreign journalists, a charge he denies.
But as much as they probably tried to keep it a secret, Sultan's superiors apparently knew about his relationship with Nassar. There were rumors that the couple might be outed. Then they were each called separately to report to the Riyadh Police Department for a criminal investigation. That's when we said, "Oh my God," according to Sultan. He says they were left with no choice but to leave the kingdom and seek asylum elsewhere. Human rights lawyer Alison Battison told the Australian edition of The Guardian that under the country's convoluted immigration laws, there is no limit to the length of time these people can spend in detention. An online petition demands their immediate release with what are called bridging visas that would allow them to stay in the country while their case is being processed. It's not known if thousands of signatures will have any impact on the couple's fate. Saudi Arabia's state security agency defines homosexuality, feminism, and atheism as forms of extremism.
Finally, former Australian rugby star Israel Folau made waves again this week as bushfires ravaged parts of his country. In a sermon at his father's allegedly cult-like evangelical Christian church, he linked the natural disaster to the advent of marriage equality and relaxed abortion laws.
Look how rapid these bushfires, these droughts, all these things have come in a short period of time. You think it's a coincidence or not? God is speaking to you guys, Australia. You need to repent. A little taste of what God's judgment.
The sermon was posted to Facebook. Folau was fired by Rugby Australia for violating provisions of his employment contract with social media posts vilifying LGBTQ people. He's suing Rugby Australia for unlawful termination based on his religious belief.
Then came word that Folau unknowingly made a donation to a queer youth organization. The embattled rugby star and his wife Maria dined recently at Gorilla Kitchen, a vegan restaurant in Auckland, New Zealand. The lesbian owners and operators of the eatery announced in a Facebook posting that Folau's payment for the meals was being donated to Rainbow Youth, a support group for vulnerable LGBTQ young people. They said they didn't ask the Folaus to leave because it would make a more positive point to serve them. The post continued, "We found it quietly amusing he ate food cooked by a lesbian and then served by a lesbian. We haven't gone to hell yet."
That's NewsWrap, global queer news with attitude for the week ending November 23rd, 2019. Follow the news in your area and around the world An informed community is a strong community.
NewsWrap is written by Greg Gordon, edited by Lucia Chappelle, produced by Brian DeShazer, recorded at the studios of KPFK Los Angeles, and brought to you by you.
Help keep us in ears around the world at thiswayout.org, where you can also read the text of this newscast and much more.
And you can listen to NewsWrap each week by subscribing to our This Way Out Radio YouTube channel. For This Way Out, I'm John Dyer V.
And I'm Laura Dickinson Turner.